So we are including the word caste in the existing anti-discrimination law. Yeah, and I should just be clear.
जो कास्ट का जो वायरस है ये इस तरह से फैलता जा रहा है कि लोग इससे करियर में इफेक्ट हो रहे हैं, साइकोलॉजिकली दे आर गोइंग अंडर डिप्रेशन.
The same scourge that exists in South Asia related to caste oppression, caste discrimination is also being reflected in the United States, and we have.
This is that you guys are suffering from the Hindu phobia and you are tarnishing the image of Hindu religion, that is anti-Hindu.
Completely false accusations बना रहे हैं. ये खुद Hindu fundamentalist है, Hindu कट्टरवाद है ये.
In your bill, is there any kind of provisions of punishment also?
This will be nothing short of historic.
जातिवाद के क्या तरीके हैं? What are the different ways of casteism and discrimination in US?
कैसे नहीं पता चला तो कमर पे ऐसे हाथ लगा के देखेंगे, कोई थ्रेड वगैरह है नहीं है.
ये इन जैसे संगठन की क्या कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स होते हैं, इनके विचारधारा और उद्देश्य बहुत मतलब मोदी रिजीम से बहुत मिलती जुलती है. If you talk about the Hindu fundamentalist agenda of
how the politician reacts to the caste issue in USA, because now Indian community is also a vote bank to them. So how they appease them? What are the reactions by the politicians?
कास्ट एक ऐसा वायरस है, बहुत पहले से चलता आ रहा है. जैसा मौका मिल गया ऐसा ही म्यूटेट करके नया तरीका ले लिया, लेकिन ये आपको एक दिन जो है ना खत्म करके रहेगा. It is such kind of virus.
Do you think, Kshama, that yes, we need to recognize caste as a global problem?
And then come 21st, hundreds of people are going to be wanting to testify in public comment. All of this is going to be important because ultimately.
मेरा सवाल है कि भारत से जो लोग अमेरिका जाते हैं वो रिजर्वेशन का फायदा लेते हैं, अफर्मेटिव एक्शन का फायदा लेते हैं, लेकिन भारत में जो वंचित तबके के लोग हैं उनको मिलने वाले आरक्षण पर वो फिर विरोध करते हैं, उसका विरोध करते हैं.
The more privileged section of society is, the less progressive they will be.
If Hindus migrate to other regions on earth, Indian caste would become a world problem. अगर हिंदू दुनिया के बाकी हिस्सों में जाते हैं तो जाति दुनिया की एक समस्या बन जाएगी. Dr. Ambedkar's observation in his thesis caste in India is now a reality. Now caste is a global problem and Ambedkarites all over the world are making their efforts for the annihilation of caste. A similar effort has been made in the US city of Seattle. Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant has introduced an anti-caste bill in the House to eliminate discrimination on the basis of caste. If this bill is passed, it will be a crime to discriminate on the basis of caste in Seattle, and caste will get the same protected status as race in Seattle. Voting on the bill is going to happen this week only, and Ms. Kshama Sawant herself is present with us today to talk about the very important issue. क्षमा से हम इस जाति विरोधी बिल के बारे में बात करेंगे और जानेंगे कि अमेरिका में जाति विरोधी आंदोलन कितना मजबूत हुआ है. Let me introduce her. Kshama Sawant is an American politician of Indian origin. Seattle City Council member. She is famous for her socialist movement in America, and her work is widely appreciated. So welcome, Kshama, to our channel. Along with Kshama, we have Mr. Ram Kumar, who is the president of Ambedkar International Center in USA. Ambedkar International Center is such a forum which not only unites Ambedkarites all over the world, but also agitate against the problem of caste, which has become a global problem nowadays. Mr. Ram and his team work on the problem of caste in America. Jai Bhim to both of you. Welcome to the Newsbeak.
Jai Bhim, and thank you very much, Sumanji.
So my first question is to Kshama only, because she's the person who is leading the anti-caste movement in Seattle City Council. Kshama, why there is a need to bring an anti-caste bill in Seattle? What are the reasons that you had to, bring this bill against caste-based discrimination in Seattle City Council?
Really, the fundamental reason, and I'm so glad you asked this question, is that as the South Asian population has grown in the United States and in the immigrant community, also from other regions, we are seeing that the same scourge that exists in South Asia related to caste oppression, caste discrimination is also being reflected in the United States. And we have more and more workers. In fact, hundreds of workers have spoken out. South Asian origin workers have spoken out about the caste discrimination that they are facing in the workplace, in other settings, social and public settings. And they have courageously spoken up. Dalit community members themselves have courageously spoken up. And this legislation, what it would do is it would ban caste discrimination. So, Sumiji, jaisa aapne kaha, it will be illegal to discriminate on the basis of caste. Obviously, this is only the first step, but it will truly be historic. The vote is on February 21st, so Tuesday of next week. If we are able to win this, it will be the first such legislation banning caste discrimination in any jurisdiction in the United States. And as far as we know, it will be the first such legislation globally outside South Asia. And I'll just say that the reason this is coming up, people might think, well, how come people are not more enlightened here? People come with higher education from India, they should do better. I think the only way we can really understand this is not just by talking about the dominant caste people who are perpetrating the caste discrimination, but also understanding the roots of oppression within capitalism itself. And so we see that as long as we have a class-divided society like capitalism and also the class societies that preceded capitalism for thousands of years, as long as we have a deeply exploitative society, we are going to see these differences. And so it's important that this movement has united Dalit community members, Dalit workers, Dalit-led organizations alongside Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, socialists like myself, and union members.
Yeah, and that's why such law is really necessary. And now caste is a global problem, and we appreciate you whatever you are doing. We have Ram Kumar also, the president of Ambedkar International Center. Mr. Ram, मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगा that why this bill is very important and what will change if this bill becomes a law. What is your expectation from such bill? आपकी क्या अपेक्षाएं हैं इस बिल से?
सुमित जी, जो कास्ट का जो एक वायरस है, जैसा असमा जी ने मेंशन किया पहले ही, कि ये पहला होगा आउटसाइड इंडिया, इज राइट इन सेइंग सो, क्योंकि इंडिया के बाहर इस तरह का कोई कानून नहीं बना है पहले. यहाँ पे इस तरह के केस बहुत होने लगे हैं अभी रिसेंट कुछ ईयर्स में. एक तो इंडियन पॉपुलेशन के कुछ जो क्लस्टर्स हैं उस तरह के बहुत बनते जा रहे हैं. दैट मीन्स उन जगहों पे जो कास्ट जो ट्रेडिशन के नाम पे जो एम्बेडेड है कल्चर में, वो एक पूरी तरह से यहाँ पे एक जैसे इंडिया में होता है ना, कुछ लोग उसी तरह से करने लगे हैं कि भाई ये सब चलता है साल ओके. और अब रिसेंट टाइम्स में रिसेंट मतलब ईयर्स में बहुत सारे टेक वर्कर्स, स्टूडेंट्स, प्रोफेसर्स एंड इवन ए साइकेट्रिस्ट वो बोल रहे हैं कि जो कास्ट का जो वायरस है ये इस तरह से फैलता जा रहा है कि लोग इससे करियर में इफेक्ट हो रहे हैं, साइकोलॉजिकली दे आर गोइंग अंडर डिप्रेशन एंड दे आर वरीड. अभी पीछे केस हुआ था सिस्को का, दैट वाज द माइलस्टोन केस भी हम कहेंगे, लेकिन वो कोर्ट में गया और उसके बाद व्हाट वी सा के द पर्सन वाज सो टेरिफाइड, ये इतने डरे हुए थे. जो मिस्टर जॉन डो उनका नाम से कोर्ट में केस गया, वो अपना नाम भी एक्सपोज नहीं करना चाहते थे कि उनका शायद सोशल सेग्रीगेशन होगा, उनका कैरियर इम्पैक्ट होगा और उनके बच्चों का जो है ना परिवार का मतलब फ्यूचर भी उससे इम्पैक्ट होगा. और उससे दूसरी बड़ी बात ये भी है कि केस एक इंडिविजुअल पर्सन जाता है ओप्रेस्ड कास्ट कम्युनिटी से लेके, लेकिन अपोजिशन को डिफेंड करने के लिए एक दूसरा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आ जाता है कॉर्पोरेट के फेवर में कि नहीं ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, हमारे धर्म के खिलाफ हो रहा है. एंड दिस इज सेम. मतलब आप किसी भी चीज को धर्म से मत जोड़िएगा, ठीक है ना. ये बेसिकली एक टैक्टिक थी कि इस कैंडिडेट को डराया जाए ताकि बाद में कोई इस तरह का केस भी ना लिखे. तो उस समय पे फिर हमने अम्बेडकर इंटरनेशनल के बोर्ड में, बेसिकली वी आर डेमोक्रेटिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, तो उस टाइम के जो बोर्ड के मेंबर्स थे डिसाइडेड के हम इस कैंडिडेट की हेल्प करने के लिए बाहर आएंगे. तो हमने दूसरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से कॉन्टेक्ट किया, सबसे हेल्प ली और फिर कोर्ट में गए हम केस ब्रीफ लेके. तो दैट्स हाउ वी स्टार्टेड. और हमें उम्मीद है कि इस तरह का केस यहाँ पे जैसे समाज लेके आई है, दिस अ गुड अपॉर्चुनिटी. हम इसको एक खोज के लिए साथ में आए हैं. बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, 50 के ऊपर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो डायरेक्टली इनडायरेक्टली सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, काउंसिल को लिख रहे हैं, एंडोर्स कर रहे हैं और टेस्टिमोनी के लिए अपने मेंबर्स को भेज रहे हैं. यदि ये केस इस बार यहाँ पे मतलब कानून बन जाता है तो एक बहुत ही मेजर स्टेप होगा. फिर इसके बाद हम दूसरी जगहों पे भी लेके जाएंगे, क्योंकि जैसा समाज जी ने बताया ना, ये जगह जगह जो इंडियन पॉपुलेशन के जो क्लस्टर बन रहे हैं ना, वहाँ पे समस्या काफी गंभीर होती जा रही है. तो एक जगह पे यदि हमें सक्सेस मिलती है तो फिर हम सब फिर दोबारा जाने के लिए इसके लिए फिर से प्रयास करेंगे और करते रहेंगे, क्योंकि एक समस्या गंभीर हो रही है. जैसा बाबा साहब ने कहा था कि इस तरह की बीमारी है, जैसे बाहर जाएंगे तो साथ में लेके जाएंगे, और वही हम यहाँ पे देख रहे हैं.
Exactly, and they are migrating and taking this disease to every part of the world. Kshama, this is really very important issue. I would, want to ask you that what kind of provisions are there that you have been made in this bill to prevent caste-based discrimination? Can you give us a brief introduction of the bill, that what kind of provisions are there?
Yes, this bill expands the existing anti-discrimination law in Seattle. So Seattle already has an anti-discrimination law that says that discrimination on the basis of many categories is banned. So for example, discrimination on the basis of age, on the basis of gender identification, sexual orientation, marital status, whether you're pregnant or not as a woman, All of these types of discrimination are already banned in Seattle, and there's a law in place. What we are doing through this ordinance is saying that such protections should also now include caste. So we are including the word caste in the existing anti-discrimination law in Seattle. And I should just be clear that unfortunately, because the political establishment has prevented real gains to happen for oppressed minorities, what we have is an anti-discrimination law, and that's important. But the existing law offers private right of action. People can use this law to go into court. But we believe also that based on if we can win this law, not only should we build a movement to win this kind of law in multiple cities around the United States and then pressure the federal government to also act. But on top of that, I think we should also fight to make the existing anti-discrimination laws much more powerful. For example, in my view as a socialist, it should be that the law should say that if there has been caste discrimination or discrimination based on any of these other categories against any worker in a company, for example, then that company is liable. They should be made to pay a fine. Maybe their license should be revoked. There should be real consequences that should be met by the executives of the corporation. It's only through that kind of deterrence that we will be able to win. But winning anything is going to take a real struggle. And we should also, I think, talk about the opposition to this bill, because that will really clarify why we need to fight for this.
Okay, that is really very important, Kshama. Like in India, we have a protection law for scheduled caste people. That is, we call it Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act, and in which there is also a provision to punish the guilty. If somebody is, found guilty, there are some provisions of punishment also. In your bill, is there any kind of provisions of punishment also to penalize the accused if somebody is, doing caste-based discrimination?
You're absolutely right. We need those kinds of protections. This bill adds to the anti-discrimination law in Seattle. And as I said, the existing law is not strong enough. Just to explain, the reason it's not strong enough is because just like in India, you have the Democratic Party that actually does not stand with ordinary people, does not stand with working people. And there are some differences with the Republican Party. The Republican Party is openly pro-corporate, openly anti-worker and anti-union, anti-oppressed communities, and they are openly right-wing. The Democratic Party is not of the same flavor, but at the end of the day, what we have seen through the decade, that almost nearly a decade that I have been on the city council as a socialist, is that the Democratic Party, it's me and 8 Democrats on the city council. That's the city council, 9 council members. And what we have seen is that every step of the way, every time we have, through my office, through building a movement like the one we are building right now, that Ramkumar ji is also part of, what we see is that every time we need to win something, we have to fight against the political establishment. And that is why we also have to continue the fight to make this law an even stronger law. But also at the same time, let's not lose sight of what we have ahead of us. If we are able to win this on February 21st, if we can demand successfully that the Democrats don't postpone this, don't water this down, and vote yes on this on this bill on February 21st, this will be nothing short of historic, because this will be the first formal, official, legal acknowledgement of the existence of caste discrimination. This is of huge consequences, and this will be not only in the United States, which is the belly of the capitalist beast, but this will be, as I said, as far as we know, the first such bill outside of South Asia. So this has enormous consequences.
Exactly, this is historical, and we wish this bill is going to become a law, and the caste-based discrimination will be eradicated. Now I'll move to Ram Kumar. राम जी, हम भारत में देखते हैं that we have certain ways of casteism. हमारे यहाँ तो बहुत ही structural casteism होता है. बट अगर हम यूएस के समाज को समझने की कोशिश करें कि अमेरिका जैसा एक मॉडर्न मुल्क है, एक आधुनिक समाज है, वहां पर जब यहाँ से भारतीय लोग वहां पर जाते हैं तो वहां किस तरह से जाति उनके आड़े आती है, जातिवाद के क्या तरीके हैं, व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट वेज ऑफ कास्टिज्म एंड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन इन यूएस?
तो सुमित जी, थोड़ा मैं पहले बैकग्राउंड से बताता हूँ। लाइक अमेरिका एक इमिग्रेंट्स का कंट्री है। ये बहुत इंडिया की तरह का ये नहीं कि हजारों साल से वहाँ पे लोग रहते हैं, डिफरेंट कल्चर सिविलाइजेशन बनती बिगड़ती रही हैं। पिछले कुछ 100 साल की कहानी है यहाँ पे। दुनिया के जगह जगह अलग अलग हिस्सों से लोग यहाँ पे आए हैं, अपनी कल्चर लेके आए हैं, अपने रहने के तौर तरीके लेके आए हैं। कुछ अच्छाई भी लाए हैं, कुछ उनके साथ साथ में जो बुराई है वो भी लेके आए हैं। लेकिन धीरे धीरे यहाँ की सोसाइटी ने बुराइयों को पहचाना है, उनके हिसाब से कानून बनते गए हैं। तो इस तरह से यहाँ पे रेस के आधार पे कानून होता है, जेंडर के डिस्क्रिमिनेशन के आधार पे होगा, एज के आधार पे होगा। तो ऐसे बहुत सारे क्लियरली डिफाइंड है, वो समय के साथ में इवॉल्व हुए हैं, समय के साथ बनते गए हैं। तो जो कास्ट है यहाँ की कोई ओरिजिनल चीज नहीं है। कास्ट ये साउथ एशिया से आई है। साउथ एशिया से कहें तो मेनली इंडिया से, क्योंकि साउथ एशिया में बाकी कंट्री में भी होता है, लेकिन जहाँ की जो मेजोरिटी पॉपुलेशन साउथ एशियन है वो इंडियन है। और उनमें भी जो स्टार्टिंग में आए वो डोमिनेंट कास्ट के आए हैं, क्योंकि इंडिया का जो सोशल स्ट्रक्चर है, वहाँ का जो है ना रिसोर्सेज है, एजुकेशन है, बाकी सुविधाएं हैं, वो ओप्रेस्ड कास्ट के पास ऐसे नहीं थी। तो इतने लोग नहीं है, बहुत ही रेयर केस में आए हैं। तो ज्यादातर जो लोग पहले आए फिर वही यहाँ के अपनी कल्चर का अच्छाई बुराई बताएंगे, क्योंकि यहाँ के लोग तो जानते नहीं है और वो चीजें उजागर नहीं होने दिया। लेकिन पिछले कुछ दशक से, 2-3 दशक से जो है ना टेक रिवोल्यूशन हुआ, फिर बाद में थोड़ा एजुकेशन लिबरलाइजेशन हुआ, तो अपॉर्चुनिटीज वहाँ पे कुछ लोग मतलब इंडिया से एजुकेशन के लेने के बाद में मेडिकल सेक्टर में, थोड़ा बिजनेस में भी आने शुरू हुए। तो फिर धीरे धीरे कास्ट का यहाँ पे जो एक्सप्लॉइटेशन था, डिस्क्रिमिनेशन था, वो उजागर हुआ। तो कुछ केस में आपको बताता हूँ कि जैसे मतलब इंडिया की तरह तो नहीं है कि मतलब अभी वहाँ पे ऑनर किलिंग कर देंगे या छत से
है यहाँ पे,
या हॉस्टल के छत से कूद के जान देनी पड़ेगी, एटलीस्ट ना तो प्रोटेक्शन है। लेकिन इस तरह का क्लियरली डिफाइंड कास्ट नाम की चीज नहीं होती। हम यहाँ पे वर्क प्लेस पे जाते हैं कि ऑफिस में जाएंगे, कहीं पे मेन बिजनेस पे होगा, तो वहां पे एक बोर्ड लगा होता है एज पर द लॉ कि भाई आप यहाँ पे मतलब जेंडर के आधार पे, एथनिसिटी के आधार पे, एज के आधार पे, नेशनलिटी, रिलीजन, ये सब के आधार पे डिस्क्रिमिनेशन करना कानून का मतलब उल्लंघन है, सजा होगी। तो उसमें कास्ट नहीं है, क्योंकि ये नहीं पता है। तो अभी अवेयरनेस बढ़ना शुरू हुई है एंड केस बाहर आने शुरू हैं। तो अब कास्ट का ज्यादा डिस्कशन हो रहा है। अब किस तरह के यहाँ पे मतलब डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होते हैं, तो टेस्टिमोनी के आधार पे बताता हूँ। अभी जो टेस्टिमोनी हो रही है तो वो बहुत सारे, एंड नॉट ओनली अम्बेडकराइट, जो दूसरे हैं डोमिनेंट कास्ट के लोग, वो भी आ रहे हैं कि किस तरह के डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होते हैं। तो जैसे जॉब में आप काम ऑफिस में जाते हैं, तो कुछ केसेस, कुछ कैंडिडेट ने इस तरह की टेस्टिमोनी दी है कि ऑफिस में जब तक कास्ट का नहीं पता चलता, सारी टैक्टिक यूज होती हैं, भाई नाम, लास्ट नाम कहाँ से है, किधर से आए हैं, कौन सी इलाके से रहते हैं। बेसिकली वो सब डिकोडिंग के तरीके हैं कि उस जगह से ये वाला नाम है तो भाई पूछेंगे उस तरह से क्या कास्ट हो सकती है। ऐसा नहीं तो जैसे कुछ लोगों ने बताया, आई वाज वन ऑफ देम आल्सो, कैसे नहीं पता चला तो कमर पे ऐसे हाथ लगा के देखेंगे कोई थ्रेड वगैरह है नहीं है, तो समहाउ कास्ट का पता चलेगा। तो फिर यदि आप जॉब में हैं तो जो अच्छे प्रोजेक्ट हैं, अच्छी मीटिंग, क्रिटिकल मीटिंग है ना, तो इंटेंशनली या कैसे भी आपको उनसे मतलब अलग कर देंगे किसी भी तरह से, ताकि धीरे धीरे आपको जॉब से पीछे करते रहें, आपको मतलब टॉपिक में इग्नोर नहीं करेंगे, आपका अच्छा फीडबैक नहीं देंगे। और दूसरा, कुछ कंपनी में यहाँ पे जो प्रमोशन होता है या सैलरी रेज होता है, वो सब इंटरनल रिव्यू भी होता है एम्प्लॉय के अंदर का। अब यदि कास्ट का पता चल गया तो डेफिनेटली कुछ लोग उसमें मतलब नेगेटिव फीडबैक देंगे, तो बेसिकली करियर में इस तरह से पछाड़ेंगे। और अभी बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स सामने आ रहे हैं, जो नए स्टूडेंट आ रहे हैं इंडिया से, वहां पे लगता है कि समस्या और भी ज्यादा गंभीर है, क्योंकि एकदम नए नए आते हैं तो कल्चर में पूरी तरह से इंडिया में रहते हैं कि सब चलता है, ये नॉर्मल है, नेचुरल है। कास्ट के आधार पर आप डिस्क्रिमिनेशन कर सकते हैं, गलत नहीं है। तो जो माइंड सेट है वो एजुकेशन के साथ साथ में पूरा इंपोर्ट हो रहा है। और कैलिफोर्निया के स्कूल्स में, यहाँ पे कैलिफोर्निया स्टेट यूनिवर्सिटी का जो स्कूल सिस्टम है, उन्होंने ऑलरेडी बैन कर दिया कास्ट वहाँ पे के आधार पे, यदि आप डिस्क्रिमिनेशन करेंगे तो जुर्म है। तो वहाँ पे स्टूडेंट्स को पता चलने पे कास्ट के आधार पर उनका रूम शेयर करने से मना कर देते हैं कि नहीं, हम मतलब उस कास्ट के साथ में रहेंगे। और दूसरा तरीका होता है कि भाई आप नॉन वेजिटेरियन है तो आप शक के दायरे में आ जाएंगे, फिर कास्ट का पता करेंगे, फिर आपके साथ में जो है ना मतलब इंफॉर्मेशन क्लास शेयर करना भी वो मना कर देंगे। और कुछ केस अभी इस तरह के भी आए हैं कि पेरेंट्स ने मतलब जहाँ पे अमेरिका में रह रहे बहुत साल से बच्चे आपस में शादी करना चाहते हैं, तो उनको भी मना करने के नहीं, दूसरे कास्ट के साथ में, लोअर कास्ट वर्सेस अपर कास्ट है, हम नहीं करने देंगे, हमारा ब्लड स्ट्रीम बना के रखना है। तो उस तरह के भी केस अभी यहाँ पे आ रहे हैं। तो ये कुछ एग्जाम्पल हैं। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि इस डर से कि यदि मैं अपने बाहर आवाज उठाऊंगा जाके तो मेरा सोशल बाइकआउट हो सकता है, तो वो जो ट्रॉमा है उस वजह से बहुत सारे लोग बाहर आना भी नहीं चाहते, क्योंकि एक बार कास्ट पता चलता है तो इट्स नॉट लाइक द फिजिकल वायलेंस, आपका सोशल सेग्रीगेशन होगा एंड दैट इज अ मेंटल टॉर्चर कि कास्ट होते ही आपको बाहर निकाल देंगे, अपने ग्रुप में से निकाल देंगे, इन्फॉर्मेशन शेयर नहीं करेंगे, स्कूल के जो बच्चों का ग्रुप है वो अलग बनाएंगे। तो ये इस तरह की टैक्टिक जो है ना बेसिकली आपको इमोशनली फिजिकली ह्यूमिलेट करेंगे और आपके कैरियर में आपको पीछे करने की कोशिश करेंगे। और अभी मैं एक रिसेंट का केस बताता हूँ, ये अक्टूबर में शुरू हुआ। एक ये मैं टेस्टिमोनी लेके जा रहा हूँ वहाँ पे सिएटल में, आई गो विद द डॉक्यूमेंट्स देयर। एक ईमेल मुझे मिलना शुरू हो गया, वो जो बहुत सारे उसमें कॉपी किए हुए थे, जिसमें यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोफेसर भी थे, यूएस के कंपनी के बहुत सारे एम्प्लॉइज थे, एचआर मैनेजर्स थे, बहुत सारे लोगों का एक ईमेल कॉपी किया था, जिसमें लिखा हुआ था कि इंडिया से आने वाले एससी, एसटीज, ओबीसीज ये कैपेबल नहीं है, इनको प्रोफेसर प्लीज फेल देम और इनको हायर मत करो, और इनको मतलब इनके लास्ट नेम, एक ईमेल में था कि इनके लास्ट नेम ये होते हैं, जस्ट अवॉइड देम, बायकॉट देम। एक ईमेल, कैन यू जस्ट बिलीव, और समहाउ इट एंडेड अप इन माय इनबॉक्स। मैं प्रिंट आउट लिया, मैंने इसको एफबीआई को रिपोर्ट किया, मैं इंडियन एम्बेसी लेके गया अपने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ में। दिस इज द थिंग कि हमें नहीं पता है बंदा यूएस का है और सिटीजन है या इंडिया का है, लेकिन दिस इज इट, इंडिया का है तो यू टेक केयर। Then I reported on the FBI website, and ये डॉक्यूमेंट मैं सिएटल सिटी के पास लेके जा रहा हूँ। कुछ लोग वहां पे बोलते हैं कि नहीं कास्ट हम पीछे छोड़ के आ रहे हैं, तो ये फिर कहाँ से इतना जो डेंजरस प्रोपेगेंडा हेट का चल रहा है, कहाँ से आ रहा है? दिस इज द रिसेंट केस दैट हैपेंड टू मी, एंड दैट इज द रीजन, फिर मैं सोचा कि एनफ इज एनफ, I came to the AIC board, jumped in there, and then when we found that there's a case going on in the Seattle, I said, let us use the maximum, the capabilities and fight back. तो बताइए, मैनीफोल्ड, मतलब बहुत सारे तरीकों से जो डिफरेंट टैक्टिक्स है, मतलब इस धीरे धीरे शुरू हुआ है कि ये सब चलता है। पहले वो एटीट्यूड है कि चलता है, कौन क्या कर लेगा, क्योंकि इनके ऑर्गेनाइजेशन फिर धर्म के नाम पे आते हैं कूद के कि इंडियन को ही टारगेट करते हैं, हमारे धर्म को टारगेट कर रहे हैं, जबकि जो कानून है जिसके बारे में हम प्रयास कर रहे हैं, ये पूरा साउथ एशियन का है, इसमें किसी धर्म का कुछ नहीं है। कास्ट इज अ साउथ एशियन प्रॉब्लम देयर, लेकिन क्योंकि पता है कि मेजोरिटी में करने वाले लोग इंडियन इमिग्रेंट्स हैं, तो फिर वही ज्यादा शोर मचाते हैं कि हमारे धर्म पे मतलब ये आघात हो रहा है। अब देखिए, आप धर्म के आधार पे किसी को इस तरह की ह्यूमन,
I have a very particular question on this. Actually, I'll ask Kshama later, but now I'll come to another question to Kshama. Kshama, dominant castes are very mobilized all over the world, and like they have groups, they are, they have money, they have power, they have everything. They have control on so many institutions in wherever they are living. So, especially the hardline Hindu groups are, criticizing you a lot that, what kind of you work are doing and raising the issue of caste. So this is nothing, it's not a problem for them. So these hardline Hindus groups and especially dominant caste groups are criticizing you. So what kind of resistance are you facing for, this bill? What is the resistance you're facing?
First of all, can I just say the examples that Ram Kumar ji gave, I mean, they're just so outrageous. And anybody who, regardless of what caste you are, or even if you're not South Asian, if you're an American working person who's not very familiar with caste, that kind of story, that kind of account should completely outrage you, and you should find that unacceptable. Anybody being targeted on that basis, just an email going out saying that this person should be boycotted because they're oppressed caste. I mean, it's just unspeakable. And as it was said, it is really mental and emotional torture and trauma that we have to speak out against. And जैसा आपने पहले कहा सुमी जी, यहाँ बहुत बड़ा आंदोलन हो रहा है इस ऑर्डिनेंस को जीतने के लिए, और इसका जो यूनिटी है इसमें, it's very important to talk about. ये, as I said before, ये सिर्फ दलित लोग नहीं है, दलित लोग हैं, पर उनके साथ में मेरे जैसे सोशलिस्ट है. I'm a member of Socialist Alternative. It's a nationwide organization of socialists, and most of the members of my organization are not South Asian. I just happen to be South Asian, and I happen to be on the city council. But the reason we're supporting this is not because I'm South Asian, but because I am a socialist, because as socialists, we desire to live in a society free of exploitation and oppression. And so we instinctively have solidarity with any struggle against discrimination and oppression. But हमारे साथ dominant caste हिंदुओं का साथ भी है, मुसलमानों और सिखों का साथ भी है. So this is a very big movement that encompasses this kind of widespread unity. पर उसके साथ में on the other side, we also have the opposition. So विरोधियों के बारे में बात करना भी जरूरी है, because this is a real that we face real opposition from the Hindu right wing. And ये कौन है? These are organizations like the Hindu American Foundation or the Coalition of Hindus of North America, or CONA for short. ये इन जैसे संगठन की क्या कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स होते हैं, इनके विचारधारा और उद्देश्य बहुत मतलब मोदी रिजीम से बहुत मिलती जुलती है. If you talk about the Hindu fundamentalist agenda of Narendra Modi, the Bharatiya Janata Party, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, these are organizations that have their tentacles inside the South Asian community in the United States. And so many of the dominant caste people who are speaking out against this, they are using those right-wing talking points. As was already said, one of the talking points they're using. And I say talking points because these are all falsehoods. These are not based in facts. But one of the talking points they'll say is, this is anti-Hindu. No, this is not anti-Hindu. This is anti-caste discrimination. So if you're a dominant caste Hindu who wants to carry out discrimination, then absolutely this law will help to hold you responsible for that. That is true.
Even I was just looking at some of the tweets and some of the tweets and posts on social media. They says that you guys are suffering from the Hindu phobia and you are tarnishing the image of Hindu religion, that is anti-Hindu. The label is there on you.
Yeah, ये जो completely false accusations बना रहे हैं, ये खुद Hindu fundamentalists हैं, Hindu कट्टरवाद है ये, and that's why we have to call them out for what they are and not be defensive. Like, we have to go on the offensive to fight for our bill. And to be very clear, the CRM anti-discrimination law already bans discrimination on the basis of religion. So this is not going to be in any way an attack on dominant caste people. And if I can just give you an analogy that might help people understand how dangerous and toxic and false these right-wing talking points are. 3 साल पहले US में सबसे ऐतिहासिक movement हुआ, वो Black Lives Matter movement. At that time, it became the largest street protest movement in US history precisely because it was multiracial. Working people from different races, not just Black people, came out in anger against racism because those who marched, the 26 million people who marched, we all marched, and I was one of them. We marched because we want to live in a society free of racism. At that time, there were right-wing people. ये white है, ये सही है, लेकिन वो right-wing है. The majority of white people are against racism. To be clear, this is not about identity. This is about politics. It's always about politics, not about identity. But at that time, there were the right-wing who said, a minority right-wing who said that white lives matter. उनके कहने का मतलब क्या था कि the assumption is that there is no racism in society. And so if you say Black Lives Matter, it's going to be detrimental to white people. Complete falsehood. It's the same logic that they're using, that if you protect upper caste people against caste discrimination, that's an attack on dominant caste people, because the premise in their minds is that there is no caste discrimination. So if you say this, then it's against us. So that's what we have to call out. It is based on a complete falsehood. There is caste discrimination. If you're a dominant caste manager in a big tech company and you don't discriminate against oppressed caste people, then you have nothing to worry about. So the people who are speaking out against this ordinance, they are opposed to actually ending caste discrimination.
Caste them is not a problem because they are following their religion, and caste is something which is the foundation of the Hindu religion. And they say that, okay, this caste-based system is, it was built by the creator of the nation, the universe, the Bhagwan, God, and everything is created, the caste. So they're just following the religion only. So they don't find anything wrong in that.
They don't. And to be clear, the majority, in my view, the overwhelming support that we've gotten from the Hindu community is very important. For example, an organization called Hindus for Human Rights, they are very clear. They say that we are proudly Hindu and we are proudly in favor of banning caste discrimination because we stand with our Dalit brothers and sisters. So we have to be clear. These people, Hinduism ka jhanda laga ke करके ये बोलते हैं, these are not the people whom we should listen to. We should listen to other people who are saying it doesn't matter what religion I am in solidarity with the Dalit community and I am fighting for this ordinance. That is why the opposition is so angry, because they cannot, they're not been able to prevent this kind of unity that we have built. That is their enemy. When we build unity across caste, across religion, across gender, among working people, that is when we become a threat. And also, Sumiji, one thing that the Indian audience should understand also, obviously the opposition on the ground is coming from people who are aligned with the Modi regime, people who are aligned with the Hindutva and Hindu fundamentalism agenda. That is true. But ultimately they are not the ones who are going to be voting on this ordinance. Those who are going to be voting on this ordinance is myself and 8 Democrats. And we have seen through our past experience that actually the Democratic Party does not want to upset the so-called apple cart. They want to maintain the status quo. They don't want to make enemies out of any powerful interest, let alone the Modi regime. Mm-hmm. So we have already had this experience actually almost exactly 3 years ago. We, through our office, and actually many of the people who are part of this struggle were part of that struggle too. We were fighting for a resolution from my office condemning Narendra Modi and the BJP's very deeply unjust, anti-Muslim, anti-oppressed caste, anti-poor citizenship laws, the NRC bill. Resolution was going to condemn it and also urge US Congress to do the same. At that time also we had massive opposition. वही जो संघी अब आ रहे हैं हमारे विरोध में वो तब भी थे 3 साल पहले. And at that time the Democratic establishment, I know these stories from behind the scenes because I'm on the council. They were absolutely angry at me for bringing this resolution because they did not want to take a stand against powerful people. वही सब एक बार फिर हो रहा है 3 साल बाद भी. So we have to be very clear. What we have to fight against is not only the Sanghis on the ground, we also have to fight against the Democratic establishment itself and demand that they vote yes. If they say they are progressive, then they have to vote yes on this ordinance. And it's on this kind of fighting strategy basis that 3 years ago, we won that resolution unanimously. Even the Democrats who are not comfortable with the resolution ended up voting yes because they were terrified of the powerful movement we had built. That's what we have to do again.
तो क्षमा जी हमें बता रही हैं कि कैसे जो हिंदू फासिस्ट आइडियोलॉजी के जो लोग हैं, जो फंडामेंटलिस्ट हैं, वो कैसे इनके बारे में वहां पर छवियां गढ़ते हैं और इनको बदनाम करने की कोशिश करते हैं इस तरह के आरोपों की. तो उस पर वो बात कर रही हैं. राम कुमार हमारे साथ में हैं. राम जी, मैं आपसे ये जानना चाहता हूँ, जैसे क्षमा बात कर रही हैं दैट सम ऑफ द हिंदू ग्रुप्स आल्सो आर जॉइनिंग यू इन द बैटल ऑफ एंटी कास्ट मूवमेंट अगेंस्ट द कास्ट बेस्ड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन इन यूएसए. What is your experiences of dealing with such groups? Because इंडिया में तो हम लोग देखते हैं कि बहुत सारे जो प्रोग्रेसिव हिंदू हैं वो भी बहुत ही मतलब बचा के काम करते हैं, बहुत ही सेफ गोल करते हैं, वो बहुत खुल के जाति का विरोध नहीं कर पाते हैं. तो चूंकि आप एक दूसरे देश में रह के जाति विरोधी आंदोलन चला रहे हैं, तो वहां पे रहने वाले जो हिंदू हैं, जो सवर्ण हैं, वो जो अपने आप को प्रगतिशील भी कहते होंगे, जो प्रोग्रेसिव भी बोलते होंगे अपने आप को, आपका कैसा एक्सपीरियंस है उनके साथ में कि क्या वो एंटी कास्ट मूवमेंट को उतनी अच्छी तरीके से एक्सेप्ट कर पा रहे हैं जितनी तरीके से आप लोग कर रहे हैं?
सुमित जी, देखिए, जो मतलब पहले समाची ने बताया कि उसमें हमारे साथ में प्रोग्रेसिव हिंदू ऑर्गेनाइजेशन भी साथ में आए हुए हैं, तो हमें इस तरह से बदनाम करना कि कि हम केवल कुछ अम्बेडकर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ही इसके मतलब पक्ष में बाहर आए हुए हैं, ये कहना गलत है. बहुत सारे प्रोग्रेसिव हिंदू ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हमारे साथ है. कुछ के पहले मैं नाम बता देता हूँ आपको, जस्ट फ्यू. मैंने पहले बताया था कि 50 से ज्यादा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हमारे साथ हैं, लेकिन उनमें से कुछ के नाम मैं बता देता हूँ. जैसे एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल यूएसए, वो हमारे साथ है. बेगमपुरा कल्चरल सोसाइटी, गुरुद्वारा श्री तेग बहादुर जी हमारे साथ में. इंडियन अमेरिकन कम्युनिटी सर्विसेज, ये अमेरिकन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है. लैंडलॉर्ड एसोसिएशन ऑफ वाशिंगटन, अमेरिकन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है. साधना कोलिशन ऑफ प्रोग्रेसिव हिंदूज है. हिंदूज फॉर ह्यूमन राइट है. वेटरन्स फॉर पीस. तो इस तरह के दूसरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन भी हैं जो चाहते हैं कि एज पर लैंड ऑफ द लॉ सबको जो है प्रोटेक्शन मिलना चाहिए किसी भी तरह के डिस्क्रिमिनेशन के खिलाफ. और रही बात जो बाकी जो दूसरे हैं ना, मतलब जिस तरह से हमें ये प्रोजेक्ट करते हैं कि भाई हम लोग एंटी मतलब हिंदू और अभियान चला रहे हैं, बिल्कुल गलत है. जो मेजोरिटी ऑफ हिंदूज हैं, मेरे ज्यादातर फ्रेंड्स जो है ना, हम सब साथ में रहते हैं, मैक्सिमम हिंदूज हैं, ज्यादातर इन चीजों को पसंद नहीं करते. लेकिन उनका भी शायद पहली बार तो डायलेमा है कि भाई यदि ओपनली आगे आएंगे तो शायद उनका भी साइकोलॉजी लाइक सोशल बाइकआउट ना होना शुरू हो जाए, शायद कुछ उसमें है. लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी ये सब चीजों को भी नजरअंदाज करते हुए बहुत सारे टेस्टिमोनी देने आ रहे हैं. पिछले 3 हफ्ते से मैं टेस्टिमोनी सुन रहा हूँ जो कैंडिडेट्स हैं, उसमें बहुत सारे डोमिनेंट कास्ट हिंदूज है. वो क्लियरली बोलते हैं कि वी आर डोमिनेंट कास्ट, बट ये चीज बहुत ही अंदर ही अंदर यहाँ पे चलती है, डिस्क्रिमिनेट करने की स्ट्रेटेजी बनती है और ये चलता रहता है. तो सम ऑफ देम, उनमें से कुछ लोग आवाज उठा रहे हैं और ज्यादातर लोग डायरेक्टली ओपनली ऐसा कुछ नहीं करना चाहते. उनको नहीं लगता कि इससे यहाँ पे मतलब यूएस में ऐसा करने का कोई मतलब भी है. लेकिन फिर भी ज्यादातर लोग शायद उस वजह से कि सोशल बाइकआउट ना उनका भी होना शुरू हो जाए, क्योंकि जो फंडामेंटलिस्ट है ना, वो कुछ ज्यादा लेवल तक चले चले जाते हैं, बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है, लेकिन दे मेक नॉइज एवरीवेयर। जैसे समाज जी ने कुछ बताया कि मतलब यू कैन सी द पैटर्न देयर, कि यही लोग पहले CA-NRC के खिलाफ भी थे, वही लोग अब कास्ट के भी खिलाफ है। उनका लॉजिक आप पता नहीं, उनको ही पता होगा कि वो ना तो यहाँ पे जस्टिस चाहते ना उधर जस्टिस चाहते। अरे भैया तुम्हारा पहले डिफाइन तो कर लो, करना क्या चाहते हो। इंडिया में आप जस्टिस की बात करते हो सभी सिटीजन के साथ में, आप उसके खिलाफ भी जाते हो यहाँ पे, और यहाँ पे आपके खुद के ही लोग जो इंडिया से आए हैं वो जस्टिस मांगते हैं, तो उनको भी बोल रहे हो नहीं ये गलत हो रहा है, क्यों, मतलब ये तो हमारे धर्म के खिलाफ हो रहा है। ऐसे थोड़ा ही बहुत ही कम लोग हैं, लेकिन यस दे आर मोर वोकल and they coordinate and they get more funding and all that, पता नहीं कहाँ से आता है, but yes they are more vocal। but ऐसा नहीं है कि they are everyone, most of the Hindus and South Americans, they are just living good life, they don't want to go in these things there। लेकिन openness के साथ में अब धीरे धीरे कुछ ही लोग आए हैं।
I would say though the reason we are at this point actually is, I mean, I agree that the vast majority of people haven't spoken out one way or another, and in fact it's true, as Ram Kumar ji said, the right wing is vocal, but its voice is louder than the size of them. But at the same time, they are also a powerful enemy, precisely because the Democratic Party does not want to be opposed to any powerful force, because you see, if it was true that it was just a few right-wing people, then it would be a different balance of power. That's what this is about. In politics, it's always about balance of power. But what the Democratic establishment is very clear about is that their agenda, the agenda of this right wing, is very much aligned with the Modi regime. And the Modi regime, if you look at the US geopolitical interests with the Modi regime, it's very clear that it wasn't just Trump. Obviously, Trump most overtly had a connection and common ground with the Hindu fundamentalist regime because he is obviously right-wing. Modi is right-wing. There is a lot of common ground among them because of their political ideology. But if you look at the new political situation that we're heading into with the new Cold War between US and China and the inter-imperialist rivalry, in that context, the US government, headed by a Democrat, Joe Biden, and the Democrats in US Congress and the Republicans, they want to court a relationship with the Indian regime in order to build their network, their base of support against China and in this new Cold War. So given all that context, the Democratic Party does not want to take on any battle with the Modi regime. That's what's at the root of why the Democrats on the city council, their preference would be to not have this ordinance take life at all. They don't want to take a stand on this. They don't necessarily want to be opposed to it either, but they don't want this ordinance in the first place. What they hate is that they're being forced to take a stand, and they will have to explain, if they claim that they're progressive, then how can they oppose this? Like, अगर आप खुद को प्रगतिशील समझते हैं, तो आप जातिवाद के विरोध कैसे नहीं कर सकते? You have to be against caste oppression.
You have to.
So this is what building a fighting movement is about. We're putting a spotlight on the politicians and forcing them to take a stand, even though they really don't want to because of their larger international political agenda. That's what's behind all this, and that is also the basis of confidence for the Hindu right wing in the US, in Seattle, because they know that they have these sort of powerful entities behind them, and that's why we should not underestimate them either. But the bottom line is very clear. The support that we have gotten among dominant caste Hindus and among South Asian in general, like if you look at everybody who's speaking up about this ordinance, whether for or against, then it's very clear that the overwhelming majority of them are in favor of this ordinance. That's very important because that's the basis of unity that we can build, and that kind of solidarity is important. And I should also mention, in addition to the organizations that Ram Kumar ji mentioned, which are very important, like Amnesty International, we also have labor unions and workers supporting us. So we just got a strong statement of support from Alphabet Workers Union, which is a union that represents Google workers. अब ये यूनियन इसमें हिंदू है, दलित है, but Americans भी है, मतलब non-South Asians भी है. So this is a solidarity across race and nationality where they are all together saying, as a workers union, we are opposed to caste discrimination and we are supporting this caste ordinance. This is very important.
Shama, because you are a politician also, so I just want to understand that now Indian community people, especially the dominant caste, are influential in US also, like electorally also. They have the voting rights, and now Kamala Harris from the Indian origins is a Brahmin lady from the India, is the Vice President of United States. How the politician reacts to the caste issue in USA, because now Indian community is also a vote bank to them. So how they appease them? What are the reactions by the politicians?
That's very important, actually. One of the reasons, one of the dimensions of how we've been able to put pressure on the Democrats, for example, 3 years ago when we won the resolution against the CAA NRC, is on the basis of them having to come to terms with the fact that South Asians, more and more South Asians are now legal voters. So that's very important. And it's also important to note, as you've done, that with the overall progress that's happening in society, that we have more and more people of color and immigrant community members becoming prominent in politics. But we have to be very, very clear. Ultimately, if we look at this on the basis of identity, it will be completely misleading as to which side these politicians are on. So the reason I am fighting for this ordinance alongside this movement with us, and the reason my organization, Socialist Alternative, is fighting for this also, is not because we are South Asian or I have South Asian identity. I mean, I do have a lot of familiarity with the caste issue, obviously, because I grew up in India, and I grew up being very angry about caste oppression and many other reasons, also angry at poverty and inequality, which is why I'm a socialist today. But me being South Asian, in my view, is completely incidental to why we have taken up this issue. It has everything to do with politics, political ideology, political positions, not identity. To give you a counter example, you mentioned Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is not on our side. I mean, she has not spoken about this ordinance specifically, but overall, when I say our, I mean, if you consider yourselves progressive, if you are fighting for a society that is much better than what's on offer under capitalism, if you want to end economic exploitation, if you want climate change to be addressed, if you want oppression to be ended, then people like Kamala Harris are not on our side. Just because she's brown-skinned or has South Asian origin like myself or Ram Kumarji, does not make her on our side. Also, she is part of the Democratic establishment. She is not vice president. If she had been a fighter, anything like me, I promise you she would not be anywhere close to the vice presidency of the Democratic Party. What the Democratic Party's position on me and Socialist Alternative is complete opposition. We have won 4 elections in the city council despite the massive opposition from the Democratic Party, not because of their support. And to give you another prominent example, there is a Congress member from the state of Washington who is also like me from India. Her name is Pramila Jayapal. She also says she's progressive. She's actually the head of the Congressional Progressive Caucus in US Congress, which has 100 Democrats. I mean, this is a very powerful politician we are talking about. She led the way in betraying, recently, this was only weeks ago in December, she led the way, helped lead the way in betraying railroad workers, broke their strike, helped break their strike, and denied them something as simple as paid sick leave. So many of these, unfortunately, not all, but unfortunately, many of these South Asian American politicians actually have a very pro-corporate, anti-worker agenda. And so we have to be very clear that it doesn't matter what color or skin you are or what nationality you are. It matters what political positions you're willing to take.
Oh, politicians are same everywhere. Yeah.
Yes,
So
most politicians and political parties, unfortunately, under capitalism are the same. That's true.
Exactly.
Because their agenda is upholding the status quo and fighting for the interests of big business and the wealthiest and the most influential in our society. That's true.
Ramji, I'll ask you one very important question. जैसे इंडिया में जब हम कास्ट को इंटरनेशनलाइज करने की बात करते हैं तो दिस इज दैट कास्ट इज एन इंटरनल मैटर और वी कैन डील विद दिस. हमको इसको बाहर ले जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. और आप बाहर ले जाते हो तो भारत को बदनाम करते हो, आप इंडिया की इमेज को टैर्निश करने की कोशिश करते हो। व्हेन यू टेक दिस कास्ट इशू टू द इंटरनेशनल फोरम्स, तो आपको क्या लगता है कि जाति की समस्या को इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे लेके जाना और इसको देश के बाहर इस पे चर्चा करना, वो एंटी नेशनल जैसा कुछ है?
सुमित जी देखिए, सब डाइवर्ट करने की चीजें हैं मुद्दे को। कास्ट एक ऐसा वायरस है, बहुत पहले से चलता आ रहा है, जैसा मौका मिल गया ऐसा ही म्यूटेट करके नया तरीका ले लिया, लेकिन ये आपको एक दिन जो है ना खत्म करके रहेगा। इट इज सच काइंड ऑफ वायरस। अब आप मेरा बाहर ला के गला दबाते हैं, बाहर आ गया मैं आपसे पीछा छुड़ा के, यहाँ पे मेरा गला दबाना शुरू कर दिया तो मैं चिल्लाऊंगा भी नहीं। तो उसमें गलत क्या कर रहा हूँ? आई हैव टू फॉलो द लॉ ऑफ द लैंड। एवरीबडी कम्स हियर, हर कोई यहाँ पे अमेरिकन ड्रीम के लिए आता है कि भाई उधर से थोड़ा अच्छी लाइफ होगी, मेहनत करूंगा तो मेहनत के हिसाब से मेरा रिकॉग्निशन होगा, मेरा परिवार बच्चे बड़े होंगे, यहाँ पे एक ड्रीम लेके आते हैं। अब आपका वहां से कुछ लेना देना नहीं है, आपने वहां की सिटीजनशिप भी छोड़ दी, नागरिकता भी छोड़ दी यहाँ वाले बन के। अब फिर यहाँ पे यदि आपके साथ में ऐसा कुछ हो रहा है तो आपको इंडिया से तो लिंक खत्म ही हो गया। और रही बात छिपा के रखने की, कब तक छिपाओगे भाई? जो गलत हो रहा है, अब तो इतना सारा सोशल मीडिया है। पहले तो था कि खारा पानी क्रॉस कर लिया तो नरक में जाओगे, क्रॉस ही मत करो, लेकिन अब तो इंटरनेट से रोजाना क्रॉस करता है। इस तरह की खबरें कहां तक छिपा के रखोगे? जो गलत है तो है। अब इसमें कहाँ का इंटरनेशनलिज्म हो गया? तो एक अच्छी चीज है ना, यदि आपको गलत काम कर रहे हैं तो उस पर डिस्कस तो करो, विचार तो करो। विचार करोगे, बातचीत करोगे, एक दिन सॉल्यूशन तो निकलेगा। उसको दबा कर रखोगे तो आप समस्या को बढ़ाते रहोगे। कब तक? इस मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड, भूल जाइए आपके 1000 साल पहले चीज को लेके अब तक उसी को प्राउड फील करके और उसके खिलाफ बोलने वाले को विक्टिमाइज करते रहोगे। नो, हियर इज अ डिफरेंट वर्ल्ड वी आर टॉकिंग हियर। हम यहाँ पे पश्चिम सभ्यता की बात कर रहे हैं जिसमें हम रहने आए हैं। या डेफिनेटली हमारे परिवार सब लोग दिल से लगा हुए, हम चाहते हैं कि भारत में सब लोग खुश रहे, शांति से रहें, ठीक है ना, हर किसी को मौका मिले, हमें प्राउड फील होगा। लेकिन अब यहाँ का हमारा अलग सिस्टम हो गया, हम यहाँ के कानून है, हम चाहते हैं कि उसके हिसाब से हमें भी प्रोटेक्शन मिले, तो इसमें बदनामी कहाँ की होगी?
और भारत की बदनामी अगर हो रही है तो जातिवाद की समस्या की वजह से हो रही है। अगर आपको भारत की बदनामी की चिंता है तो आपको जातिवाद की चिंता होनी चाहिए, जातिवाद से विरोध करना चाहिए। Let's be clear. What is actually something shaming? What is shaming? It's caste oppression. That's shaming. So if you want to be proud, then join us in fighting against caste discrimination.
Yeah. इसको मतलब हमेशा के लिए खत्म करते हैं समस्या को, नहीं तो पता नहीं कितने मिलियन ईयर से इस समस्या की वजह से लोग जो है ना सफर करते आए हैं, इसके विक्टिम होते आए हैं, तो इस समस्या को खत्म ही कर लेते हैं, फिर ना कोई बदनामी होगी। विल बी अगेन ए ग्लोरीफाइड रेस, कल्चर, द पीपल। और आप एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल मैं आपको देता हूँ। देखिए अभी पिछले एक हफ्ते का कुछ दिनों के अंदर की घटनाएं हैं। एक तो अभी एक न्यूज देखा न्यूज़पेपर में, क्योंकि ऑनलाइन मतलब जो खबरें हर जगह आते हैं कि IIT मुंबई का कोई स्टूडेंट जो है ना ऑपरेस्ट कास्ट ऑपरेशन की वजह से सुसाइड कर लेता है। ये कहाँ से आया? यूनिवर्सिटी से आया। मतलब यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर का माइंडसेट है, तभी तो वो मतलब इतना बातें हो गया कि अपनी जान दे दी उसने। और उससे पहले एक यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर प्रोग्राम हो रहा है, कल्चर प्रोग्राम के नाम पे गाली गलौज दिया जा रहा है, मतलब महापुरुषों को, पूरी कम्युनिटी कास्ट को। तो कहाँ से स्टूडेंट्स कर रहे हैं, इस माइंडसेट। अब वो स्टूडेंट जब इधर आएंगे, ट्रक वर्कर इज अ बिग इन्फ्लो ऑफ द इमिग्रेंट्स फ्रॉम द इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट। तो वो खाली डिग्री लेके और एक्सपीरियंस लेके थोड़ा ही आएंगे, वो बाकी माइंडसेट भी तो लेके आएंगे ना यहाँ पे। अब आप उसको कैसे ठीक करोगे? क्योंकि ये तो ट्रेडिशन के कल्चर के नाम पे एम्बेड कर दिया गया है। इसको आपको प्राउड फील करना है, आपको विक्टिम फील करना है, फील करते रहना है। तो फिर यहाँ के जो भी विजिबल होगा, ये यहाँ की जो है ना बाकी चीजों का डिस्क्रिमिनेशन मना है, तो लोग यहाँ पे भी तो चाहेंगे कि ये भी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन है, इसको भी मना करो, इसके लिए भी कानून बनाओ, तो आवाज उठेंगी। तो आप वहीं पे रोक दो इसको, जब से फ्लाइट लेते हो छोड़ दो उधर, यहाँ बिल्कुल मत करो, तो कोई समस्या ही नहीं होगी। लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है, ये पार्ट ऑफ द कल्चर हो चुका है। और उसको जस्टिफाई करने के लिए भी सामने आते लोग, ये सही भी है, ये हमारा अधिकार है, ये मौलिक अधिकार है, धार्मिक अधिकार है। अब आप इस तरह के यदि जस्टिफिकेशन दोगे तो फिर ये कैसे चलेगा? जो विक्टिम है वो तो सामने आएंगे, जस्टिस के लिए आवाज तो उठेगी।
एग्जैक्टली हम लोग सहें भी और कहें भी ना, ये तो नहीं होगा। इतने सालों से हो रहा है तो अब कम से कम बोलना तो शुरू करेंगे। I asked my social media followers to ask some of the questions also. I tweeted about it, and one of my audience, Mohit has asked a question from Kshama that from Britain to America and from Germany to Australia, now in many countries of the world, voices are being raised against discrimination on the basis of caste. It is happening around the world. Many countries have started including caste in the anti-discrimination policy. Do you think that, like racism, casteism should also be recognized as a global problem and strict steps should be taken against it? Do you think, Shama, that yes, we need to recognize caste as a global problem and steps, very strong steps, needs to be taken by the global community?
Yes, if you look at the statistics, both of the spread of the immigrant communities across across the world from the South Asian region, and if you look at the statistics of the number of cases of caste discrimination that we are seeing, and keeping in mind that we're actually, just like sexual violence, we're actually looking probably very likely at very severe underreporting, because oppressed caste people, it's very difficult to come out and say it because you face real consequences potentially. And so I think given all of that, it's absolutely clear that we should be fighting to get this kind of legislation passed in multiple countries across the world, and raising people's understanding, educating people about what this is and why this actually, just like racism, sexism, the bigotry against LGBTQ community members, why this is also an oppression under capitalism. And I think it's also important to note that the reason this is happening, people across the world are actually starting to speak out, is because overall in the global consciousness of the masses, of hundreds of millions of working people, especially young people, the consciousness has moved dramatically to the left in the last 10 years, because especially young people, like I said, but people in general, working people in general, are seeing that this system is offering very little for us in terms of our material standards of living, and it comes alongside all these specific oppressions that subject hundreds of millions of people across the world to even worse exploitation than the rest of the masses. So overall, what we are seeing is, for example, just to give you a very stunning statistic, during the period of the pandemic in the United States, working people, hundreds of millions of working people lost trillions of dollars worth of financial resources, including the income loss that they experienced because of being laid off during the recession with the pandemic. But at the same time, in the same time period, US billionaires became trillions of dollars richer. And we're seeing the climate crisis expanding and exploding globally. So what we're seeing is the system of capitalism, completely incapable of delivering basic standards of living, basic financial stability, affordable housing, decent jobs, all of this. And at the same time, it comes with the scourges of racism, casteism, sexism, LGBTQ phobia, all of that. So I think that's the reason why we are seeing such mass movements across the nation. We saw the farmers' movement in India, which, by the way, let's make a note of it. The farmers' movement was so successful, alongside the solidarity of the trade union movement, that they were successful in forcing Modi to concede on all three of their demands. This is absolutely important. It's showing what's possible when millions of people come together and fight courageously against these repressive and exploitative regimes. Who and let's be clear, part of the power that the Modi regime has is having billionaires on their side. So exposing that link is also important. But I'll also say, unfortunately, and this refers to your point earlier, Sumitji, that unfortunately, even though there is so much willingness, it's clear there's willingness among the rank and file to fight back and win something. What's missing is the leadership. Even though people are clear about have been clear, many people, not all, but many people have been clear about the character of the Modi regime. Unfortunately, we don't have a single political party that can actually capture the aspirations of hundreds of millions of Indian working people and channel that into a real unified working class struggle, including caste-related demands, workers' demands, all of that. Unfortunately, that's not happening. And the approach that we have used through Socialist Alternative in my office, unfortunately, is the very, very rare exception to the rule. That is why when people ask me, are you a politician? I say, no, I'm an activist, That's the reason we are different, because when we took office nearly 10 years ago, we were very clear. We are not there to become cozy with the establishment and just say maybe a few things in favor of progressive reforms. No, we were very clear. We were there to fight, and the political establishment is our enemy, and they will consider us our enemy as well. And our allegiance and loyalty lies with working people who are fighting for a better society.
So now I'm going to take two more questions from the audiences. Any of you can answer it. Sachin Kumar from our audience side, he wrote on Facebook actually. मेरा सवाल है कि भारत से जो लोग अमेरिका जाते हैं वो रिजर्वेशन का फायदा लेते हैं, अफर्मेटिव एक्शन का फायदा लेते हैं, लेकिन भारत में जो वंचित तबके के लोग हैं उनको मिलने वाले आरक्षण पर वो फिर विरोध करते हैं, उसका विरोध करते हैं. Sachin Kumar is asking on Facebook that the Indian origin people, when they are into US, they take the benefit of the affirmative action in USA, but when they are in India, they oppose the reservation or the affirmative action which is given to the marginalized section of the society. So what's your take? Any of you can answer it.
A simple word, वो कहेंगे कि बाइगॉट, the bigots. मतलब जहाँ पे आपको फायदा मिल रहा है वहां पे सपोर्ट कर लो, नहीं है तो अपोज कर लो.
If I can just add a thing about it, yeah, I think it is unfortunately true that a small minority of Dalit people or people claiming to be Dalit have opposed this ordinance, and they say that this is not needed or this is bad and so on. I think this is nothing new. It is deeply unfortunate, but it's nothing new. I mean, just to give you an example, when the Black Lives Matter was raging, we had black commentators. One of them, her name is Candace Owens, who is extremely right-wing, and she opposed the Black Lives Matter movement. Unfortunately, what we see in an exploitative system like capitalism is that the system, because the system is so exploitative of the mass of humanity, it needs to create spokespeople from among the exploited. So it's nothing new for us. In the past, there have been women who spoke out against the feminist movement. There were, in every strike vote in a union, there will be one or two workers, and in fact, even labor leaders who will speak in favor of the bosses, not of the workers. So this kind of, it's a form of internalizing the oppression. We see that. I mean, in the US movement against slavery in the 1860s, we saw slaves who were opposed to the abolition of slavery. But were they the majority? Absolutely not. They were a very small minority. But we unfortunately see this because this is one of the ways in which an exploitative system like capitalism corrupts society by creating spokespeople for itself from the bottom. And what I would say to Sachin Kumar is that, yes, this happens, but focus on the vast majority of the Dalit community who are courageously fighting for this ordinance. And I will say that not only are they courageously fighting for this ordinance in general, there have been a number of Dalits who, for the first time, because of the strength of this movement that we have now, have come out as Dalits, because they were previously scared to speak, understandably, to come out as Dalits, and now they're courageously coming out. That's the beauty of having a big unified movement. It gives courage to individuals because we all have their backs.
Very well said. Now another question from my audience. Captain Rational has written on Facebook, does caste system affect the visa approval process somehow? क्या caste system की वजह से visa approval में कभी दिक्कत आती है? Mr. Ram, would you like to answer it?
No, कभी इस तरह का केस को हमने नहीं सुना है. I don't think so.
But yes, there are some testimonies in India also that they have, given a statement to the different media organization that yes, their approval was not rejected earlier, so it was not given. There is a BBC report also.
या तो वहाँ पे ऑफिशियल करते होंगे, उधर का जो मशीनरी है वीजा का, तो उसके अंदर के जो स्टाफ मेंबर्स हैं, तो उसका मतलब होगा. वी कैन नॉट से एनीथिंग अबाउट.
Yes, it is there. उधर यूएस वालों को तो इतना नहीं पता चला होगा, but Indian officials तो they do it. There are numbers of testimonies are there actually. Okay, Binay Mahi has a question. उनका कहना है US में जो लोग जाते हैं, they are highly educated. Anybody who is going from India to the US is very highly qualified, educated person, and we believe that an educated person, will be a more nice and progressive person. But they are practicing casteism in US also. So how do you see that an educated person is also believing in the idea of caste?
यू हैव सीन द केसेस, अब जो यूनिवर्सिटीज के भी 2 केस हुए रिसेंटली, मैंने बताया, वो सारे एजुकेटेड ही हैं, वो यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं, आईटीज हैं। तो यू कैन सी एजुकेशन एंड द माइंड सेट ऑन द नेम ऑफ ट्रेडिशनल कल्चर, ये दोनों चीजें अलग अलग हैं, एंड दे कम टुगेदर आल्सो। आप उनको एक दिन चेंज नहीं कर सकते। हाँ, इसीलिए कानून की जरूरत है, शायद कानून के डर से वो चेंज होंगे और ऐसा करने से घबराएंगे।
It's true. It's true. I agree with Ramkumarji that there's not necessarily correlated level of education and how progressive you are. They're not necessarily correlated. In fact, sometimes, as you said, Ramkumarji, it can even go the other way, where the more privileged society, section of society is, the less progressive they will be. So often, when we look at, just to give you an example, in the US, there has been a real conversation about Medicare for all, because in the United States, one of the real problems that hundreds of millions of ordinary people face is not having publicly funded healthcare. It's a tragedy that people face. Real tragedy in their lives because of this, and this is nothing new. It has happened. It's been there for decades. But if you look at who supports it and who's opposed to it, it's really revealing of how class interests, and which it's somehow to some degree parallels education. Class interests really dictate what your position will be, not how much knowledge or IQ you have. So if you look at who supports Medicare for all, it's the vast majority of Americans. जो रिपब्लिकन खुद को रिपब्लिकन समझते हैं ना, जो साधारण लोग, वो भी Medicare for all को सपोर्ट करते हैं. But who opposes it? It's the big CEOs, executives, major shareholders of the insurance corporations, the pharmaceutical corporations, and the billionaire class in general. They are opposed to it. If you look at the billionaire class, many of them are highly educated. Many of them have high IQs. These are the people who oppose it. Even in our local example in Seattle, some of the biggest opponents of the progressive legislation we have fought for, not only this, but also the $15 an hour minimum wage, the Amazon tax on big corporations to fund affordable housing, renters' rights victories. Who oppose this? It's not ordinary people. It's the billionaires like Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos and other executives from Amazon, other major shareholders, they have directly opposed us and even poured millions of dollars in election campaigning against us. They didn't win, but the point is that they were very clearly opposed to anything progressive. And so it really shows you that ultimately class interests really define which side you will be.
जो ज्यादा पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं वो ज्यादा विरोध कर रहे हैं, और समानता के अधिकार पे और समानता के आइडिया पे शायद उनका उतना ज्यादा सोचना नहीं है. इट वाज रियली नाइस टॉकिंग टू यू गाइस. मेरा आखिरी सवाल है, माय लास्ट क्वेश्चन टू यू क्षमा सावंत जी, आपसे है that you are the only socialist member in the Seattle City Council, and what about the other supporting members in the House? Like, will the rest of the members vote in favor of the bill, because voting timing is approaching us? So what are their approach?
I should clarify from the earlier point that it's true that education and privilege is not an assurance of a progressive position, but let's be clear, a big section of our supporters for this ordinance is tech workers. So these are people with high education. Many of them went to some of the most prestigious institutions, and they are on the correct side of history. So let's be clear that we have that support as well. So like I said, ultimately, what dictates which side somebody is on is their political positions and their overall idea of what society they want to live in. And as far as whether we have other politicians on our side or not, as I said, the city council is 9 members. It's me, one fighting socialist, and there are 8 other Democrats. I'm pretty sure some of them are absolutely going to be voting yes, but ultimately it's a question of whether we get a majority yes vote, and that entirely, and I'm not exaggerating, entirely depends on the balance of forces. Meaning, if we are able to make it very clear to these politicians, if you vote no on this ordinance, there's a real political price you are going to have to pay. And the way we do it is by raising the profile really high of this struggle, which we are already doing. And this interview, I really appreciate you covering this, because this will further raise the profile of this issue. And then come 21st, hundreds of people are going to be wanting to testify in public comment. All of this is going to be important, because ultimately it's about building a strong enough fighting movement to ensure we win a majority vote.
Thank you so much, Kshama and Mr. Ram Kumar. It was really nice, talking to you. We hope that your bill will definitely pass in the Seattle City Council, and this will be, standing the anti-caste movement in America. On behalf of the Newsbeak and Midkite of India, we appreciate your kind efforts. It was great talking to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sumit. It was
Thank you
a
so much.
pleasure
A real
talking with you.
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I request to all of the viewers to give their opinion on this important discussion. You can comment, and I request you to please share this video with others and do subscribe our channel. This is Sumit Chauhan signing off. We'll see you again. Jai Bhim.